bit more hands-on. So hopefully that'll be good. I'll be able to show all of you the inner workings, especially with the Data Integrator, and some thoughts on dual write integration. So I am a two-time MVP, focused primarily on field service and project service. And for those that have not listened or heard, I actually have a podcast called Service Evolved, where we talk about all things service related. So project service, field service, customer service, and beyond. I've been actually I think I'm now 21 years in CRM, with the last 6 years focused on the D365 stack and platform. So I have you can see a kind of wealth of different technologies there. All right. Yep, go ahead.
Scott, you just need to share your screen. Sorry, we can't see your screen yet.
Oh, it's not sharing. That's weird. That is bizarre. I clicked share. All right, let me click share again. Share tray. My bad. Is that better?
There you go. Excellent.
All right. Fantastic. Okay. I guess maybe I double clicked. Okay. So now that everyone can see, we'll go ahead and put that in presentation mode there. And no, that was bizarre. Hold on one second. I don't know why this does this with 3 screens. All right. Let me just change that again. Always technical difficulties on a Saturday morning. All right. So hopefully everyone can still see.
That's perfect.
All right. Perfect. So I'm not going to go in my introduction again, but that was me when I had more hair. So some of you got to have a little humor, right? So before we get in, I think everyone's probably seen this slide, and I wanted to show it for a couple different reasons, right? But what we see here is all these different pieces within the Microsoft stack, right? So we have, from marketing to opportunities, and we got Power BI, Office, Exchange, all these great tools and assets available to us from a project perspective. So we can do, our resource managers, our portfolio management, all these different pieces. The one piece that I've always heard time and time again is, well, how can we build a status report and do some additional metrics around that capability for project managers, where they can easily input information, or in theory, you could also automate it. And then we need to look above and beyond that as well, and say, okay, well, now I have a finance and operations system, or I have another ERP system, right? It doesn't matter. It could be F&O, it could be SAP, it could be Oracle. How do I integrate those two together in a more seamless fashion? And of course, with F&O, it's a lot easier the way that Microsoft's done it. So we'll going to go into detail with all of those today. But again, the one thing you see here is that we have all these tools, and how do we make it easier for some of those resources that are in project service to unlock all of that power, right? So what we saw there, right? We can plan, we can estimate, we can track and forecast. On the last presentation, right, you saw a lot of things about quoting and setting up the project pieces, right? And that's great. But I always hear again from customers is, well, how come there's no project status reporting functionality? How can we go ahead and do that? Or, how do we integrate to our finance and operations system and make it a little bit easier? So those are a lot of and I'm sure you've probably heard some of those same questions. You might have heard other ones. I hear plenty, but those seem to be the big ones that pop up time and time again. Okay. And so when I was going through trying to build this. So I've built a project status report accelerator. And one of the things that I thought about was, hey, what matters to a project manager when they're trying to build a status report? And back in my earlier days, I was a project manager, and building those and trying to find all of those different pieces of information was very time consuming. Right, you had to go get your your time entries. You had to manage that against, okay, what have we billed versus um, you know what's been said we would bill, and are we over, are we under budget? It was very time consuming. And then of course what matters to you might be different than what matters to a customer, right? I mean, customers really, they want to know, are we on time, are we on budget, for the most part, and how are you managing all that? And so when a project manager is looking at some pieces, they need to look at a lot of different things. They need to look at, how are they doing on the project from a resource perspective? Um, are they managing all these risks and issues? Who's got action items? And it may not just be internal; it could be customer, right? So these are all some of the the things that I see quite a bit. And you might recognize some of these as RAID items. Um, and so, how about the capability to go ahead and put that into a project service platform to report on them? And there's a lot of different ways you can go ahead and do that. There's no, I think, no one right way to do that. But we'll go ahead and jump into you know some of my thoughts and how I went about in building that out. And at this point, I don't really have any automation in there per se, but you could absolutely automate some of these with some flows and some business rules and other logic. Right. So I'm just going to show a quick screen here about, this is again all PSA. And what I've done is there's literally no code built in here. It's just all configuration. So what I want to do at this point, just go to my next slide just to make sure. Yeah, good. What I want to do is kind of jump into a little bit on this functionality. So let's go and find the right page. Apparently that page disappeared. Second. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. So again, this is just all straight configuration. No flows, no scripting, no web resources, nothing. So the big thing here that I wanted to look at were a couple different things. Is one, where are we from a labor cost, actuals versus estimated? Right? Those are always the key things. A lot of times we need to look at is, what's our consumption, and not only what is our consumption of labor or expenses, but also where are we in terms of the progress on the project. So, I mean, you need to do a little bit of comparison, and this is where automating that may or may not be so easy. But obviously, if my cost consumption was 90% and I was only 21% done with the project, that's probably a problem. Unless the next task is all remote and it's but typically that would be a problem, right? So we have all this great information available to us within PSA. We see our estimates and our tracking, and so when we go into what I call status, I start with a blank slate, right? And one of the things that we have down here is I have this legend, and it's just basically, and if you are red green color deficient like myself, sometimes this green looks orange, but it just gives us an indication of, hey, what should be considered on track, off track, or at risk. And again, this is all configuration, so you could literally change this to your heart's content. And Raz, I'll go ahead and make this. Raz, I'll go ahead and make this event, this project, this solution. It's an unmanaged one. I'll go ahead and provide that at the end, so everyone that wants to go ahead and utilize it can do so. I think actually I also sent it to Microsoft because they were interested. So, but anyway, so what we have here is just some basic concepts, right? Where are we with the project? And depending on how your organization or your customer's organization defines phases of projects, these could vary. And just a basic option set here, right? So maybe we're in the build phase. And here's where you could, if you wanted to, this is where you could get into some automation with the overall project status based on the statuses here, right? So all of these are status of whether it's on track, off track, at risk, and do I have the right resources? Maybe I have a resource that's sick or got hurt, and now we're at risk. Stuff like that, right? And we can put in some comments. And then the big thing here is, right, why are we off track? Has the customer changed the scope, right? So if we say yes, well, now we have some additional functionality and details we need to put in. Well, why has it changed? And will this impact, upcoming dates? And are there any issues that require, that need to be bubbled up, right? So all of these, if you say yes, and you could make these flip switches, things like that. That's to make them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. That's fine. But if you say yes, you need to put in these comments because they would show up on a status report, or at least be there from a record perspective, especially if you're doing audit trail capability and things like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just put in something here, just so we can go ahead and save this. All right, and that will fill in as well, that last status. And the nice thing is this status updated on is the out of the box status updated on. So if you've noticed in the past, the overall, okay, so basically if I update the overall status, so if I automate that, right, and I say I got 2 off track, I got at risk, so I'm going to sit there and say, we're going to be red, all right, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. And so that functionality status is going based off of that overall project status, which is the out of the box functionality. Okay. So now if I scroll down here, there's things I can do at the project task level if I really wanted to show. So the project milestones and the billing milestones, the billing milestones would come in from the contract, right? So if I had a contract on this particular project, those would come in here just from hey, let me go ahead and see that billing milestone. I could, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and generate one here because maybe it didn't come in. So I have some of that capability I could still see. And then if I have a new field on the project task that basically says it's actually I think we're using this is milestone field. So if we have any milestones, we can go ahead and see that, just so the project manager can go ahead and know what's coming up and know it's pretty big, if we're behind or if we're still on target. And then as we scroll down, and I kept this all on the same page. You could separate it out into different tabs if again, it's all configuration on how you want to do this. But I have the issues, the risks, all the different functions and features here. If there's any dependencies and action items that may be assigned. The nice thing about this as well is if you are if your customer, like many, at least here in the US, have project service, they're also field service customers. And so this can also be utilized on the field service mobile app. You could use the D365 mobile app if you wanted to, because I have the capability potentially to assign an action item to a resource that's on the project. So if I have for example, if they're also field service, and that technician, maybe it's a technical install of a project, maybe I need an item assigned to them to go do something that's outside of, or there's an issue that I'm going to assign this to you. That could show up on their mobile app as well, and you could then set up push notifications within field service to let them know. So we're going to go ahead and just create one or two here, and let's just to kind of show you what it looks like. And again, it's pretty basic here. We're going to go ahead and just say issue number 1 here. We'll just say we're going to assign it to, again, in this case, we're going to just assign it to a user. So I'm going to assign it to myself, and you can make different things, required, not required, and then if we want to expose it on a portal. So I've taken into consideration, are there things that you want to share with a customer, and have them see, especially if something is assigned to them, right? So maybe instead of saying assign it to a user, you assign it to contacts or different key people on a project. So it all depends on how you want to go ahead and set that up. And then, do you want this to show on the status report? Maybe it's an internal thing and you're just tracking it. It doesn't need to be on the customer status report, but it's more internal. So you have that functionality and that flexibility is what I really was going for here. Okay. And then as we progress, we can go ahead and say, yep, it's assigned, it's closed, it's behind schedule. And again, some of these you can absolutely automate and say, okay, if it's due on, if it was due on the 12th, you could go ahead, and if it hasn't been closed out, you can sit there and say it's behind schedule. So we have some flexibility there, and all of these have an auto number functionality. So, just so we can report on that and say, hey, it's issue 100 or issue 1 or issue 2, depending on how you want to go ahead and take care of that. Right. So now we have some of these different pieces of information that we can start seeing. Okay, what's going on? And just see some. So here's another example for, hey, do I have a dependency? Right. And how critical it is, inbound, outbound. So is this a internal, external sort of issue? What's the deadline? What's our next action items and updates? So again, just different ways you can manage this if there's a dependency on anything, whether it's internal or external to the project. Right. So maybe it could be, an example is your project is dependent on another group that is outside this project, but they need to get some sort of infrastructure piece done, or whatever it may be. Maybe they need to install a server. Those are all things that can be defined here. Okay. So all configuration. If we take a look at the solution, right? So I have the solution here, and what you'll see is, we have the project in there, of course, because we've added the items to here, to that entity, and then we just have some different entities here. I've seen it where action items, issues, risks, all those are one entity, and they're just a type that could be done as well. I chose to separate them out just from a little bit easier of reporting, or if I was pulling it out. And again, it's just, I think in that particular case, it's a preference. I think because some of these have different functionality in different fields, I instead of having a bunch of different business rules to hide and show, I separated them out. You could, in theory, streamline them and go ahead and make them all very similar. And then this way, you just choose a different type field, and that would be fine. Again, this is an unmanaged solution, so you could, in theory, go ahead and change whatever you wanted to, and that would be fine. So now I go ahead and I've created this, um, these records, right? So now let me go back. And so now, okay, maybe I have a bunch of details in here. Well, now what, right? Um, do I create how do I want to, how do I report on this? And there's a couple different ways you could go. You could certainly create a, a Word template if you wanted to, and generate that and attach it and do all that stuff, and that would be fine. I actually thought about that, and I actually had one built out, and then my environment got refreshed, and um, that was gone. But I've actually decided, um, to do that, and then in addition, a Power BI. So kind of unlocking, I think, the what I call the power of Power BI, right? And that's really just showing us what this platform can do. So if I go back to my deck now, just real quick. So this is an example of one of the, and I'm going to explore it. I have a couple different templates, for projects and project status, but you can see here that this looks very familiar to what you just saw, right? And so we start seeing some of the details on the project here on the on the right side. Sorry, so these are all the kind of, whoops. So these are all kind of the overall project pieces here. We have, and then this is all over here on the left side. This is all the status. And the more information I pull in, or enter in, we start seeing the information would be here as well, right? So that's kind of the beauty of that. And again, you can do this in a Word template as well. I actually will rebuild the one that I have, or the one I had built, and I'll send that as well, because I like that I could also just automatically attach it or send it out, and um, and then this way, and then I have that history of ongoing status that's attached to it, and say, yes, I sent that out, or you received it, and you can start tracking that with the email pieces, and if you wanted to see if they've opened it and things like that, that would, obviously is a powerful piece of information. So if we go into now, I want to go ahead and pull up my, okay, come on, there we go. So this is, and again, I will share this as well. So you'll get the Power BI templates, that I've created. And what you'll see here is just some basic configuration of this, and we can do our filtering by project. So if I wanted to choose any of the other projects that I had in the application, I could go ahead and do that, and then of course it'll start updating some of that information. So that's, again, you'll see the different configuration. Out there's my buddy Bar, who was on. So Bar, I just gave you some cred. So I need, you owe me a little something. So this is a nice way, a nice snapshot, especially if we have a project manager. Again, we can start looking at this from of course, depending on what the role is and what they have access to. You know, since I'm a system admin, I can see everything. But maybe I'm a project manager, or I'm a practice manager, and I want to see, I want to just see what's going on. I want to see what's going on with some of my different projects, and I can go ahead and pull this up at a snapshot and make sure my project manager is doing what they need to do. So in this case, if Dan, I look at his project and I start seeing, well, all of these pieces of information are blank. How do I know it's on track if he really hasn't filled out all of the details? So I can go ahead and give Dan a call and say, hey, you need to start filling this out, because I see all these details here on the project, but you haven't filled this all in. So I'd like to be able to go ahead and see that, right? And then if we wanted to, and this is where it started building this out, you can start seeing some additional schedules and details. But and I'm going to show why I didn't build that out after. So we have that information, and now what we want to do is, let's just say, well, what else can I view from a project or project manager, from a status reporting, or any other details? I want to get a little bit more granular. So what I did was I've created some additional Power BI templates and dashboards, and if my screen would refresh, there we go. So, oh, so let's go to this one first, so we can start seeing some of the details on what you really can do here within Power BI, and within the data of not just the status reporting that I've built, but just in general the details that are provided. Once you start filling in, you have resources putting in time and expenses, and you start managing the project task, or aka the WBS, right? And you start updating those percentages complete and all that other functionality. Okay, come on. Uh-huh. Yeah. Never fails. Never fails. All right, let's go back and log in, and if not, I'll just pull it up in the Power BI that I have. Let's go ahead and close this out too. Hold on one second. I'm going to close some of those because I think we're getting a little slow. So as we're waiting for my lovely system to respond, let me see. Let me put this over here. I think that is my problem. All right, so hold on one second. I think I have frozen up. Can everyone still hear me? Yes. All right. I'm just gonna do one thing. I think I froze up, so let me. I'm gonna.
Hello.
Yeah.
We can still hear you. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. My screen's frozen real quick, so let
Oh, I
me.
see.
Yeah. Let me just. Let me see if I can close something. I may have to
Yeah, it'll
jump
probably
off
be
real
worth
quick
just
and.
disconnecting and reconnecting to
Yeah.
the chat again. That would be good.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks everyone for your patience. I know it's quite an intensive session. Really good. Extending the project service automation capabilities with this level of reporting integrations is really great to see this in action. I'm looking forward to downloading this accelerator actually and giving it a try. How many people on this currently would someone actually use? Please feel free to mention it in the chat window. It'll be interesting to see how many scenarios would actually potentially benefit from such a solution. Yep. Okay, great. Yeah. So Lindsay's saying definitely she would definitely use it. Was it? Yeah. Yeah. Emlo as well. Yep. So lots of people. James as well. Yep. So lots of people are using PSA. Looks like. Yeah. Rajbabu. Hi, Rajbabu. Yep. Okay. So there's a lot of interest. And it'll be interesting to understand how many people here are using more than just PSA. You're using FinOps in addition to PSA. Okay, let's look at some of these questions. Lots of questions here. So Mansour is asking, the customer engagement side wants to structure their application more on the basis of how they run their business. Let's say a transport company has rail, air buses. They would like to have possibly 3 separate organization units, whereas the legal entity, I can understand why you're asking the legal entity question now. The legal entity in F&O would be based on the companies registered with HMRC statutory recognized, which would be one legal entity running all 3 businesses or 10 legal entities in F&O. Seems interesting that companies are going to be in project operations. Is it not available when customers do not buy project operations but have sales and marketing only? The Lantes responded saying that he thinks companies come into play with dual rights. They're dual right. So this is how it was when I played around with the dual right when it was in preview.
Yep. So I'm back. I'm just getting
Oh,
loaded up here. That is correct. Yeah, the companies will come over, and I'll show a little bit of dual right later. There's really not a whole lot for dual right yet for project, and there's a little bit for field service. However, we're going to show the data integrator, and so that could give you ideas on how you could build your own templates for dual right.
excellent. So if you could try sharing your screen and once again,
Yeah,
that'd be
definitely.
great. Yep.
So let me go ahead and share. Come on.
There you go. Excellent. Back over to you, Scott. Thanks again.
Oh, all right. All right. So now we're ready to rock and roll. So I apologize for that. Apparently, my computer and Teams sometimes don't agree. But here's another example of a dashboard, and I'm going to show some additional ones here shortly. But what we can see, if we scroll down, come on. Okay. What this will do is this will go ahead and show me the different projects. I could go ahead and I can filter this out as well. But this will show me projects, and for example, on this one, it'll show me the different tasks, how many are complete, how many resources I have, and then of course, so here's all the tasks here. We can see that there's none complete, but as they start getting completed, that list will come over here. You could also do this by overdue. What was scheduled and what should be completed and is not complete yet. So we have that sort of possibility to go ahead and see that. And what I'm seeing here is all the different projects by project manager. Right. So these are all the different projects that we see here. Yeah, this obviously my project is 2100% complete. That was, of course, that's just demo data. But what we start seeing is all the different projects that are assigned to people and what's going on and what's the status, right? So we start seeing, yeah, we have 300, and here's the team. So if you set up different teams, maybe you had different organizational units or whatever it may be, you can then start setting this up by, okay, this this group, maybe it's a territory. Depends on, again, how you want to set that up. But so you have a different ways of slicing and dicing it. Maybe maybe it's by manager, or by not by project manager, but by the group manager, or whomever it may be, and how your customer or how your organization kind of groups those projects. It could even be by product, right? So maybe, right, if you're a consulting firm, uh, maybe you want to group it by field service, project service, F&O, whatever it may be. Kind of group those by the different product offerings, for example, maybe that Dynamics has to offer. So you start seeing what that portfolio looks like, right? Another example of a project portfolio and status would be this example here, where we're going to go ahead and pull up. And you're going to see here, this looks a lot like our status now, where we start seeing what's on track, off track, or even at risk. And we start seeing the different details here. I can go ahead, and if I wanted to, I can say, just show me everything that's on track. And I start seeing all those details here, right? As I scroll down, I could also then start looking at individual projects. So I can start seeing, well, maybe if I want to look at this particular one, I can see how many tasks are there, how many overdue tasks. We'll go ahead and pull up this one here. Whoops. All right. So we can kind of start seeing some details, and where we are from a project, project budget, hours, expenses, what's remaining, what's been our consumption. So I can start getting an indication of, hey, where are we, and how are we looking from an overall project perspective. And then as I scroll down, I start seeing some additional details that would be very similar to what you saw on the online side, which is my actual status, right? So I can start seeing where we are from our different on track, off track, at risk, if we have any action items, risks, things like that. So now I can really start seeing some of those details at a more granular level, and get some of those pieces of information. One other thing, there's some I threw out a little tidbit that I wasn't going to show, but I actually I know everyone when they went to PSA version 3 was really upset that the Gantt chart was gone, and we keep hearing it's coming back and it's coming back. We don't really know when it is, but there is functionality you can do within Power BI. There's also solutions out there where you can do a Gantt chart within the application. I know there's some ISVs out there, but here's an example of one that I've built where you can actually do it within Power BI, and you could embed this into you could embed this, again, I put it into a dashboard. You could do a Power BI tile if you wanted to, and put this in here. But I can go ahead and start seeing some of those details here if I really wanted to. And you can change the colors of these if you wanted to by role, or by individual, so that the colors here on the timeline could differ as well. Right? So just some additional functionality that I wanted to throw out there, because it's one of those things that I know individuals such as myself really like to look at the Gantt chart. And you could also look at the Gantt chart if you were using the PSA add-in for Microsoft Project. But if you want to just see it without going outside the tool and having that, this would be a nice little function for you. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of the status reporting, and we've gone through some of the setup and things, again, we hear about, well, now we have finance and operations, and how do we get everything set up within the application? How do we start integrating? All right, so let me go ahead and pull back up my presentation here for you, so that we can, before we jump into the setup of how we go ahead and get started. We're going to start out with the Data Integrator. And the Data Integrator for those that are not familiar, it was the precursor to dual write. And so it was, different projects you would set up so that you can integrate F&O and CE, PSA, field service with together. So it is relatively simplistic, I guess. It's not terrible, but it has some steps that we have to go through. So we can see here, this is a slide, and I'm going to send those some links in the deck, and it'll show you all this. This is all out there on docs.microsoft.com. But what this really is showing you is all the different pieces of information that could, in theory, that get integrated, how they get integrated, and what's the flow. And the flow is important to understand. And especially if you're not integrating, if you're a PSA customer or you're implementing PSA and you have a customer that is not using F&O and you're not using the dual write or Data Integrator, it is important to understand there is a recommended way to integrate PSA with an ERP. And so, I've had customers in the past that wanted to use Oracle ERP and send Oracle projects and WBS down to PSA. That is not supported. And you're going to have significant problems based on the dependencies and what happens behind the scenes with PSA when you set up a project in a WBS. It does all this magic and creates all these different records in different tables. That does not happen through integration. So please, please, please make sure you understand the recommended and best practices from an integration perspective. All right. So first things first, before we go ahead and get started with anything from a CDS Data Integrator perspective, we need to understand the requirements. There is setup. There's a lot of details when it comes to specifically project service automation integration. And there's solutions we need to install within our CE environment to get it to work. And so if you look at 3 and 4, all right, we can get prospect to cash solution that's on AppSource. And then I have a link here to the PSA to finance solution that also needs to be installed. That one will actually put the project number field on the project entity. It does some additional details, but that's the project number that gets auto-generated is a requirement, right? So very important that you follow these directions. You look at all the different integration documentation, and that should make it a lot easier, especially if you start having some issues, to go ahead and troubleshoot what those issues may be. Because the one thing that I'll show you, and I have some errors to show you, is that the Data Integrator error log and error handling has come a long way, but in some cases will leave you scratching your head. So before we jump in and I just show you how it all works, again, these are from a less of an eye chart than that first diagram. This is how the flow for project service works to finance, right? So when we have to have first off, we have to have a project contract. You cannot, if you think you're just going to go ahead and do a project and project tasks and happy day, no, it's not going to work. You need to have a contract. So all of these things are required. You have to have a project contract, the contract lines. You don't have to go into a whole lot of detail, but they need to be there. Okay. And then we have our project tasks, right? Very simple, one way. We have our transaction categories. So this is a bi-directional, and we're gonna see that. And this would be a great candidate definitely a great candidate for dual write, because dual write, of course, we can specify, of course, with dual write, directions and things like that. But this one's an amazing candidate. And then we have our hours and our expenses that estimates, right? So we're sending estimates to finance so they can do their forecasting. And then we have actuals that go to F&O from a journal perspective. And then when they post, the actuals come back um, to PSA as with voucher, what they call voucher information and taxes and things like that. So don't get the big thing is that whenever I I tell customers about details from a PSA or even a field service perspective and say, hey, we generate, example is a work order summary. So we have all the details on a work order, and it's got the hours, and it's got the products, and it's got an estimate, it's got a quote unquote tax. Well, if there's an ERP system, which hopefully there is, that is the system of record from a financial perspective. So we kind of call it it's the pro forma invoice, so to speak, right? It's not close to what you're going to get billed. It may not be exact. Okay. And there's ways you can get exact with different ISV solutions like Avalara and things like that. But if you have an F&O perspective, an ERP, I would leave it to the ERP. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump into our Data Integrator now. Actually, before we get into Data Integrator, there's a couple things we need to do. So if you've never set up any of the integrations before, the first thing you need to do is you need to make a connection to your finance and operations environment. And I actually already have one set up. Now, when you're using the Data Integrator, the F&O instance and your CE instance do not have to be in the same tenant. That is the nice feature about the Data Integrator. Dual write, you have to be in the same tenant. So if you're, for example, if I'm fsguru.onmicrosoft.com for CE, that I need to have that same tenant for F&O. Otherwise, it won't work, right? But in this particular case, I have one here that my good friend Bar at Avanade lets me connect to, and so I'll give him a little shout out here because I know he's on, but I couldn't have done this without him because I am not an F&O person. All right, so I have my connection set up. I say where I'm going to, and I pick the tenant and the URL and all that stuff. So I have all of those set up. So I go to again I go to make.powerapps.com and I go ahead and connections and we're good. Now I go to my admin and I go to data integration, right? And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new connection set. What this does is it's telling the system what are you connecting? What two systems are talking to one another, right? And so we kind of give it a name. So I'll just call this one D365 Saturday PSA FO. Right? And what you'll see here is when I showed you all those connections here, it's telling me what all my connections that I have set up. So I'll go ahead and select, I could select my common data service one. So maybe I'll go ahead and just select that one. And here's my environments, right? So I pick my environment, and then I do the same thing with my F&O instance. And the F&O instance, you're going to see you'll see a bunch of different ones. So you go ahead and just pick the right one. I'm going to go ahead and cancel because that list is long and I'll never remember what it is. But once you get that set up, so it looks like this. And so I'm going to just show you the details real quick. So it gives you an environment, and in F&O, once you select the environment, it also you select the organization within there. And so you'll see things like DAT, USMF, a bunch of different ones. If you're not sure which one to connect to, speak to your F&O person as to which organization you should be integrating to. Okay, you can select multiple, and that's nice, but just make sure you have the right one set up. And so you can see here I have US, mine is USMF, which I think is manufacturing. Okay, it'll automatically it'll add in different keys here that you need. In some cases, again, in that documentation for PSA, or if you're doing field service, or if you're starting to integrate other ones, um, understand what additional keys you may need. Right. And in many of the cases, they are here. In some cases, you may have to add additional ones. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. And so once you're there and you have those connections set up, you have to go ahead and set up a project. And a project is essentially, what do you want to integrate? All right. And I know we're getting short on time, but I'm just going to show this real quick. We'll just say that. It doesn't matter. You select your connection. And then you're choosing a template that Microsoft makes available. There is an order to this, and again, it's in the documentation. And I typically will number them in the order that I want, and that's required. So you have to have an account first, and then you would do your project and contracts, project tasks, things like that. So you'll start seeing all of these. You'll see field service ones, and then as you scroll down, you're going to see all these dual write ones. And we're going to touch on dual write real quick, but dual write gets set up in F&O. So I wouldn't, once you get down to this area here, stop. These are great to look at, but all the F&O ones and for dual write get set up in F&O, and they actually just populate automatically. All right, so then I would go ahead and choose my organization, and then I go ahead and create. And I just chose warehouses for simplicity because I have all the other ones set up. Now, the difference with the data integrator versus dual write is dual write, once everything's set up and it's running, it's extremely near real time. And I say that because I've made changes in F&O, and it's come over to CE in seconds. The data integrator in and of itself, the way that works is, so let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. Right. So if I go ahead and say my account project, and you're going to see here real quick, I can see my mapping. So the nice thing is I can look at my mappings. I can add fields to it. So this will tell us all the details. What equals what. If there's a function, I can start seeing what that function is. And there's ones that it'll tell you in the documentation if anything is required to be done on your side. All right. I can see the execution history, and in this particular case, I see that there's 107 errors. I could go ahead and click on why, and I know why. It's because I've already ran this in the past, and it says there's an integrity constraint, which basically means, if you're not familiar with it, I already have those accounts there, and it's not going to allow me to since I had started over, it's not going to allow me to go ahead and resend them over because I haven't changed anything. But with the data integrator, I also, if I want to go ahead and set this up on a schedule, I actually have to physically set that up. All right. So how often I want it to run, how, it doesn't end, how frequent, how many minutes. So it's different from dual write, because dual write, you don't set up any of that. It just, as you make a change, it sends it over. It sends it to CDS. And then it'll get picked up by CE or vice versa, right? So that's kind of what happens on this end here, right? So if I come back to my projects and I start seeing some of these details, let's just say we wanted to do projects and contracts. And so you can see there's a bunch of different mappings here because it's telling me what's required first. So we have the sales order, sales line, project, and if I wanted to, so let's just say I didn't make any changes to this. I just mapped it. Let's see what works, right? And it'll run, and it'll tell me it's executing. And then eventually, when it's done, I'm sure I'll have errors because again, this is demo data, and I've already synchronized this over in the past before I refresh the environment. But it'll eventually update us with those details. And you can see here I have all the different orders. So accounts. I was doing products at one point. Products, you could have products in here, and that's fine. The transaction categories, again, those can go at any point in time. My projects and contracts, tasks, expenses, and then actuals, right? So you have a bunch of different details that again, I order them in the order that they should at least initially be synchronized. All right, and a lot of times what I would recommend is, especially if you get errors and you're not sure what they are, work with someone on the finance and operations side to make sure that, one, again, there is some setup you have to do in F&O initially to get the data integrator working, and that's in the documentation as well. But it's really a joint project. Unless you know a little bit about both systems, it would be extremely hard for you to troubleshoot this on your own, because there's so many different inner workings of finance and operations that, again, unless you're an expert, you might not know everything that is required. Okay, I know we're almost out of time, so I want to open this up for questions. So are there any other questions?
Thanks, Scott. So we probably have the most questions asked throughout the whole event, queuing up here. Lots of comments and questions. But I think the important thing is for you to share the link to your accelerator. I think it'll be a big travesty if people missed out on that, because a lot of people are. Whilst you're away, I do a little survey, and a lot of people are interested in using your accelerator.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it'd be really great if I could share that in the chat window, so people, or feel free to share it on your screen so that people can know where to find you.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and so that's a great question. So let me go ahead and I don't know what happened to my slide with my information here, because it was there. So let me go ahead and just do new slide. So here's how you find me. So you can find me here. Find me LinkedIn.com, in LinkedIn, and then Twitter. I am Field. There we go. So either way, feel free to reach out. But Raz, I will go ahead and I will send you. I'll probably send you a link to all the solution files, because I know sometimes with zip files they don't go through from a security perspective. But I'll send you a link. And then if we want to get that out to folks, or if anyone just wants to contact me directly, I'm more than happy to provide that access, because I think right now I had it somewhere, but I think right now it's on my OneDrive.
Yeah,
But
well, there you go, guys. You know what to do. You've got Scott's contact details. You've got his email. You've got him on LinkedIn, on Twitter as well. So please, now's your opportunity to connect with him on LinkedIn. Send those requests through now on LinkedIn, Twitter. His email, scott.lefante@avanar.com. So you can get in touch with him, and he can provide you those files. And I'm also happy to send you all an email after the event. If Scott wants to share it after the event, then that's also possible. And we'll also share it on the social media channels. So we've got lots of social media channels. We can happy to share it for you. on our social media channels as well, Scott. So to
Excellent.
help you publicize this and make this aware, because it seems though a lot of people are not aware of this, and so it'd be good to get the word out.
Fantastic.
So yes, yeah. So thanks again, Scott. That
Great.
was
My
fantastic.
pleasure.
Covered a lot of ground there, and I think you did definitely address the many of the use cases of the people attending today, especially with the FinOps and the Power BI integration dashboards. A lot of people are excited about them to get that true value out of PSA. So yes, so everyone, I think that now it's over to it's over to track two now. So if everybody could head over to track two, I think Auntie would be very happy and surprised to see you all there. The event continues on track two. So please, everybody, the link is there in the chat window. So please head over to track two, and there the event will continue. They're a really good session on right now by Raphael. So please switch over to track two, and the event will continue there for the final session, and then obviously with a closing message from Auntie as well. So thanks everyone. Again,
Great.
I will still stay on this line, but guiding you all to track two. And thanks once again, Scott.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.